Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. But before I do this review, I wanted to take this time to wish you all a very happy new year. Hopefully you saw the new year in style, and hopefully 2019 is going to be friendly to you. So I thought to start off 2019 I'll do a movie review. This movie is a horror film from Ireland, English language, released in the year 2017, directed by David Frayne, and this film is called The Cured. So The Cured is set in a decimated island. A zombie outbreak had taken effect and it's basically wiped out a lot of people. But a few years have passed and now the authorities have taken control and society is trying to rebuild itself. And so some of these zombies have actually been cured, and that's how basically the outbreak stopped, is that these scientists come up with a cure that allows these zombies to return to their normal state and to be integrated back into society. But unfortunately, the zombies that have been cured still have recollections of what they've done when they were infected, and so there's a lot of guilt that's besieged these people that makes it very difficult. So when they're integrated into society, the public don't want them back in. They say that they could turn at any time and that they're dangerous and they shouldn't be forgiven for what they've done. So they're spat on, they've been assaulted, and there's a lot of protests and saying that they don't belong here. And so the ostracized cured believe that it's us versus them mentality, and they're going to have to take the law into their own hands in order to get the respect they want, which has catastrophic consequences. So the main character is one of these cured. He doesn't want anything to do with this group that are trying to convince him to join, and he wants to actually look after his sister-in-law and his nephew. Now, his brother was the father of this family who passed away in the outbreak, and he deems it as his responsibility to try and make a better life and try and redeem himself in the eyes of these people that he actually caused a lot of pain to. But it's going to be very difficult because, as I said, there are two sides in this society that are threatening to tear the country apart, and what happens from that point on and whether or not that is the case is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Cured. Although this is not a totally original idea, I definitely think The Cured is a breath of fresh air in a very tired zombie subgenre. So if you're sick of this, the standard zombie film where it's the infected versus the living and the living have to seek refuge somewhere where they can live happily ever after, then The Cured is definitely one that's going to shake it up a little bit. Now this idea has been done. The first time I heard about this idea was in a TV miniseries from Britain called In the Flesh. Now I didn't really like In the Flesh, but I thought it was very interesting. Basically the dead being able to reintegrate into the living and how the living will actually respond to that. And so the cure borrows that same idea. You've got this cure where they actually still have recollections of what they did as the infected, and basically the public saying they don't want anything to do with them. Now on one hand you can say it's a zombie film, but on the other hand it's a very relevant, realistic talking point in how we deal with each other in today's society, especially in a society that's so full of paranoia. You got Donald Trump's immigration ban. You see on the news where you got ISIS who do all those beheadings and all those terrorist attacks in the Middle East, and now when you got Muslims who come into the West, how the West treat that based on what they've seen in the news. And basically it's the generalizations, it's painting them all with the same brush, and how dangerous that can be and how tragic that can be, because the person that you're belittling because of what you've seen on the news and basically generalizing, that person could be a very decent human being. And this movie shows that. It shows the dangers of ignorance. It shows the dangers of basically lashing out at something that makes you feel uncomfortable. And so the generalization in this movie is based on what the zombies did in the past. Is what when the outbreak came out, everyone was basically terrified. The whole place was decimated. Now that's been rebuilt, the zombies are trying to integrate, and some of them are very good people, especially this main character, but it's generalization. The public see one of these cured and they deem them as evil. They deem them as creatures and that they don't belong here. And so whether it's immigration in the real world, or whether it's mental illness or HIV or someone with an illness that no one really understands about, and so it's the ignorance that's shaping the monster in the psychology of a human being, and how humanity treats each other, I think, can be a lot scarier than a zombie. And so basically human beings can be basically the true monster, and I think The Cured really looks at that mentality, and The Cured will actually create something in a tired subgenre that actually proves a talking point. And I think that's what makes this movie worth seeing, is that it actually brings a little bit of content behind what is a genuine horror film. And so the horror movie does have moments of suspense, it does have moments of gore and blood, which you would expect from a movie like this, but it's a slow burn sort of film, and the slow burn allows these characters to blossom into something that you can really relate to. And so this main character especially, I could see that he was a really good human being, is that when he was infected he didn't have any control, but now he's come back to the way way of living. He wants to redeem himself, but it's very difficult because the public aren't going to allow that. And so you've got clashing on the streets, and as I said, it's the ignorance that's really tearing the country apart, and that sense of melancholy is intensified not only through the characters and the very dull, sort of dreaded atmosphere that the movie creates, but also the visuals. The visuals have a very grey palette and a very green palette as well, and the grey and green create that sense of hopelessness, creates that sense of melancholy, that this is a society that's built itself, but it's never really freed itself of the carnage. It's because now there's a new monster, and that monster is psychology, and the psychology and the ignorance and the stigma behind something very different that makes everyone uncomfortable. And so it's definitely a movie that hits you on more than one point as far as horror is concerned, and it does make you think. And so the visuals are complemented very well from the acting performances. The main character especially, as I said, very likeable. I could see he was a family man, but he was worried. He felt a lot of guilt, and if you feel a lot of guilt, you feel a lot of remorse, does that basically allow you to forgive someone? Is that okay, he didn't want this, but he realizes and he comes to terms with this, but he's still not given a chance, and so therefore you create a lot of emotion for this main character. And so I always thought, all right, well, he deserves a second go, but no one's really allowing that because of actions done in the past. So the performance from the main character was very subtle, and the performances from everybody involved was very subtle, and once again it gives you that downbeat atmosphere. You've got Ellen Page, who played a supporting role as this sister-in-law that I thought, okay, well, she was pretty good. Her name was there to sell the film because she doesn't do an outstanding job, but she still does that job at trying to come to terms with the past and trying to come to terms with the new sort of addition of this brother-in-law and whether or not she can fully trust him. And so there's a level of mistrust, but there's also a level of trust as well in people trying to get back to the way they were. But unfortunately, as I said, stigma is in the way of that. You've got, as I said, at the end of the film, it does go into crazy sort of horror, so it is a rewarding payoff. But I thought the slow tension build and the slow burn atmosphere of the film works in its favour and also against it. Now, the slow burn, I can see a lot of people not liking that because they want a straight-out action sort of zombie movie. But for me, as I said, that strong, realistic, relevant talking point is allowed because of the fact you actually gain a sympathy for these people. Is that, okay, this is used to be a zombie, but now he's a good person, and if no attention to detail as far as the characters were gone into sufficiently, the whole idea of the film wouldn't work. And so in order to get into the characters fully, you needed that slow burn, and I thought, okay, the slow burn works, but it does prevent it from being a movie that's going to splash on the mainstream screen. It's not a cinema film, it's definitely a DVD movie, and so that is my only criticism, is that it doesn't have the pulling power to create a big audience. But if you want your movies a little bit different from the tired subgenre of zombie, then this one's going to definitely interest you. Whether or not you're going to like it, I don't know, but it will certainly interest you because, as I said, that realistic relevance as far as society and as far as humanity treating one another, I think it's very, basically sobering, and it showcases that, okay, as human beings, we might not be any better than the zombies that we were scared of. And so definitely a movie that I would recommend if you're into this type of thing. So overall, for the CURED, going to give this one 4 stars. I thought it was very impressive. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.